Humans, without a doubt the smartest animal on Earth. Yet we're unmistakably tied to our ape origins. Millions of years ago, we were apes living ape lives in Africa. So how did we get from that to this?
In the ordinary language sense of the word fact, evolution is a fact.
For most of you, this video will go directly against what you have been led to believe your entire life. Do not let cognitive dissonance keep you from discovering the truth. The greatest lie ever told to all of us is that evolution is scientific fact. It is not. It is a belief. I am not trying to prove the antithesis of the theory of evolution. I'm not even necessarily trying to change your mind if you believe in evolution. I don't think you should, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video, like I said, is just to prove that it's not fact, with the hopes that you will then go forth and research the topic in more depth with a more open mind. Now, if we look at the definition of evolution, we can see that evolution is clearly defined as the gradual development of something, especially from a simple to a more complex form. Folks, in order for something to become more complex, you need to introduce new information. Now, for the sake of simplicity, just realize that in order for evolution to even be possible, evolutionists claim that this new information is introduced through mutations. Now, common sense suggests that mutations are usually negative things, but evolutionists are optimistic and are counting on that rare case where damage will cause information to materialize out of nowhere, just by getting extremely lucky during scrambling of the genetic code. Evolutionists acknowledge that each tiny bit of new information is extraordinarily rare. Therefore, they say that's why it takes millions and millions and even billions of years to happen on a noticeable scale. Evolutionists depend on mutations to generate new information in their model. That part of the model is a huge problem. The stubborn fact is that no instance of mutation making information has ever been confirmed. Not even in the tiniest increment. Never, not once. There is not a single field observation or lab finding. The only thing that they've been able to find is a mutation which recombines existing information, or a mutation that results in the loss of information. But they have never found a mutation that resulted in new information being created. Never, ever, not once, not one time has that ever been proven to even be possible. Folks, adding brand new information to the genome essentially is evolution. So if there is no evidence that it has ever happened, there is no evidence for evolution at all. Furthermore, if there is no evidence at all that it is even possible, and no one has ever observed it happening, there is no way to calculate an average time frame for it to occur. You can't develop a mathematical equation to express the time needed for this beneficial mutation that would result in the creation of new information to occur. Meaning, there's no way to know how long it would take, even if it was theoretically possible. So this whole idea of it taking millions or billions of years is literally pulled out of thin air. Now, at this point, many of you are probably asking yourselves, what about the fossil record? To you, I say, what fossil record? There is no such thing as a fossil record. All there is a bunch of bones and fossils in the dirt. In reality, all of these bones and fossils actually help to disprove evolution. And substantially, I might add. Darwin predicted the fossil record would present a smooth and gradual transition from one kind of organism to another, but instead we find sudden appearances of fully developed organisms. not only are they not finding these quote-unquote missing links, they're actually finding new chains altogether. Even more damaging to the evolution theory than that, though, is a little thing called carbon-14. Now, radioactive carbon is like an hourglass that is inside all living things. But once an organism dies, the sand in the hourglass begins to run out. This is called radioactive decay. Nothing on Earth can stop it. And we know that carbon-14 has a short half-life. In layman's terms, we know that it is impossible for any trace of carbon-14 to last more than 100,000 years after something dies. So since evolutionists think fossils are millions of years old, they predicted that fossils cannot contain any trace of carbon-14. However, in recent years, the accelerator mass spectrometer has made it possible to measure trace amounts of carbon-14. Of course, many fossils are completely mineralized with no traces of the original carbon, let alone radioactive carbon. Nevertheless, there is a great deal of unmineralized fossil material being found, including such material as crude oil, coal, diamonds, and even dinosaur bone marrow. So what do we find when these things are tested? If you haven't already guessed, carbon-14 is present in all of these things, even diamonds. Folks, fossils are much younger than they've been telling us. And now every AMS lab in the world has the proof. Testing labs all over the world are finding carbon-14 throughout the fossil record, from top to bottom, even after carefully filtering out potential contamination. This is conclusive proof that everything on Earth is less than 100,000 years old. So this brings us to our next topic. What about all the different dating methods that they have used to conclude that these fossils are millions of years old? Well, the first thing that you need to keep in mind is that these dating methods that they speak of, like carbon dating, potassium-argon dating, and so on and so forth, are not actually used to age fossils. The so-called geologic column is what is used to date fossils. The funny thing is, fossils are used to date the geological column, which is obviously circular reasoning and doesn't make any sense, but nonetheless, evolutionists do sometimes refer to these other dating methods, regardless of whether or not you're talking about carbon dating, uranium, thorium, lead dating, rubidium, strontium dating, potassium, argon dating. No matter which dating method you're talking about, they all make wild assumptions on the side of evolution. Let me give you a comparison. All of these dating methods are equivalent to this. Say I had a burning candle that was 8 inches tall and was burning at a rate of 1 inch per hour. If I were to then ask you, when was the candle lit, you would have to make some assumptions. That is essentially exactly how all of these different dating methods work. The scientists that use these dating methods make wild assumptions that cater to the evolution theory. This is important to realize because when they date a fossil using the numbers predicted using the evolution theory, if they were to calculate a number less than what they would expect to corroborate the widely accepted theory of evolution, they throw it out. Folks, the ultimate result in all of this is basically that all these different dating methods are completely and utterly useless. They are equivalent to making up a number off the top of your head. Now, you can research this topic more, and I encourage you to do so. And you will find people who have taken fossils in to be dated by experts, only to get back wildly different numbers. It is completely and utterly unreliable, and is quite frankly an absolute and utter joke. Now, while we're still on the topic of fossils, let's talk specifically about dinosaur bones. Now, evolutionists claim that dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. Now, as I've already explained to you, this idea defies modern science. But nonetheless, they continue pushing this part of their theory. Now, imagine the surprise that the scientific community had when dinosaur bones began to surface which still had soft tissue present in them. Folks, there is no way that soft tissue could survive 65 million years. It is absolute and utter nonsense. So let's now move to the subtopic of human evolution. I'm sure that you have all heard at one point or another during your life that man evolved from ape. And I'm sure that you have been told about all of the different supposed transitional stages of human beings supposedly found linking Homo sapiens to apes or an ape-like creature. And all I have to say about this, folks, is that you really need to do your research. The vast majority of these are admitted and proven frauds, yet are still touted as being true. Let me give you just a few examples. Nebraska man was a name applied to Hesperopithecus Harold Cookie, a putative species of ape. Hesperopithecus meant ape of the Western world, and it was heralded as the first higher primate of North America. Now, folks, this discovery of Nebraska man was entirely based on a tooth, one single tooth. And from that tooth, they somehow magically constructed an entire species that, conveniently for evolutionists, served as one of many necessary missing links needed to serve as evidence for man evolving from ape. Another example is Piltdown man. Now, Piltdown man was originally classified as an Eoanthropus dawsoni. Now, the problem with this particular one is that it was discovered to be a forgery in 1953 and consisted of the lower jawbone of an orangutan deliberately combined with the cranium of a fully developed modern human. Folks, the thing you have to ask yourself is, why are there so many frauds surrounding the evolution theory? Statistically speaking, these genetic mutations that result in the creation of new information are extraordinarily rare, meaning that in order for one species to transcend to the next level, as the theory of evolution dictates, they would have to cycle through hundreds, probably more like thousands upon thousands of generations in order for this genetic fluke to occur. My point is this: either these man-like apes should have been around for thousands and thousands of years, or at the given point in time when they did exist, there would have had to have been a huge population of them. In either case, the quote-unquote fossil record should be riddled with these bones. These archaeologists shouldn't be resorting to creating hoaxes in order to gain notoriety and fame for finding the missing link. They should literally be tripping over these things. Another one would be Lucy. Lucy was discovered by a man named Donald Johanson and was found in 1974 in the Awash Valley in Ethiopia. It was classified as an Australopithecus afarensis and only consisted of several hundred pieces of bone, representing only about 40% of the skeleton of this supposed missing link. Now, what is highly suspect about this so-called discovery is that Donald Johanson went to Ethiopia with a grant to find the missing link. Now, just 2 weeks before his grant money expired and ran out, he discovered Lucy. Highly motivated, I suspect. Now, Lucy was 3 feet tall and was obviously a chimpanzee of some kind. Now, the skull was completely crushed, so they could not tell anything about the skull. But when they depict her in museums and in textbooks, they make her appear half human and half ape. The supposed knee joint of Lucy was found over 1.5 miles away and 200 feet deeper, and the hands and feet bones were missing, yet they somehow decide to put human feet on it whenever it's illustrated. Now, this brings me to a problem which should be obvious to anyone who supports the theory of evolution and who also considers themselves to be a scientist. And that is that evolution adamantly and vehemently defies entropy, or in other words, the second law of thermodynamics. This fundamental law clearly expresses that over time things degrade, things become more random, that things decline over time. A common sense way of looking at this, and something that should be obvious, is that we see species go extinct. They don't come into existence. we aren't seeing an increase, we're actually seeing a decrease. In fact, while we're at it, let me just quickly rattle off a few other fundamental scientific principles that evolution violates in one way or another. We've already talked about entropy, but it also violates biogenesis, Mendel's law of genetics, spontaneous generation, law of information systems, specified complexity, irreducible complexity, statistical mathematics, natural law, beneficial mutation, genetic complexity, and information theory. Now, folks, I must ask, how on earth can evolution be classified or considered a scientific fact when even at a fundamental level, even if proven possible, does not prove that it actually happened, has never actually even been proven possible scientifically, has been repeatedly discredited through fossil findings and recent research, hangs the majority of its most significant pieces of evidence on proven hoaxes, and defies numerous well-established scientific principles? Folks, at the end of the day, there is absolutely no way to quantify evolution as a fact or a certainty. It is a belief, and a religious one at that. People follow this theory devotedly and base their entire view of the universe and how it works on this theory. And in fact, the saddest and most apparent way that you can see for yourself how devoted the followers of the evolution theory are to this precious belief that they hold in their heart, if you go and look at any video on YouTube that even so much as questions the theory of evolution, and you will find in the comments section a plethora of people attacking the video and the video's creator in a slew of vulgar and grotesque ways, void of any logical basis, solely because their worldview is being crumbled and threatened. It is a belief, it is religious, and if we are not careful, it will be the foundation on which the one world religion is built. Folks, do not believe for 1 second that evolution is somehow fact, and that you must bend your personal religious beliefs around it. Evolution is far from fact, and is actually much closer to fiction. And it's important for me to note here that the pieces of evidence that they conclude are scientifically proven cannot possibly quantify as evolution. And calling them evolution or part of evolution is extremely misleading and deceitful. Adaptation is a much better word than microevolution to explain the subtle changes within a given species of the same kind. Obviously, animals change over time. That's how we're able to breed different types of dogs or faster racehorses for the Kentucky Derby. That's all done through selective breeding. That has nothing to do with evolution. Now, as we talked about in the beginning of this video, evolution implies the creation of new information. The problem is that every single one of these microevolution cases that they point to in an attempt to solidify their theory all are the result of recombining already existent information or losing information. In none of these is new information being created, which is what is essential for evolution to be true. To explain this on a graph, I've already explained that evolutionists believe that all forms of life evolve, meaning that they are adding complexity, they are adding information. This can be depicted by an upward graph. Now, this is all hypothetical. It has never once been proven in a laboratory setting or in the field. What scientists do observe on a regular basis, however, is the recombining of already existent information, meaning no additional complexity being added, which can be represented by a horizontal line. In other words, variations within the same kind of animal, but all resulting from the same genetic information. Nothing added, nothing subtracted. They also occasionally witness mutations that result in the loss of genetic information. This can be represented by a downward slope, or the loss of complexity, the loss of information. Now, sometimes they try and confuse you, and they will point to something that they claim is a beneficial mutation. that is actually the result of losing genetic information. But the way that that works is an organism losing a protein that a virus or bacteria attacks. Therefore, if the organism no longer produces and creates that protein, this virus that was attacking them is no longer able to. And they credit that as a beneficial mutation when in reality, it is the loss of genetic information and cannot possibly quantify as evolution. If anything, it's de-evolution. Now, when we look at these graphs, we know that the creation of new information has never once been observed, tested, or proven, even possible. The horizontal line accurately depicts no information being added or lost, while still creating variations within the same kind of animal. Now, the downward slope, as I described, explains the loss of genetic information. Now, the thing with this is, you can't continue losing genetic information and still see beneficial mutations. The vast majority of the time, when you lose genetic information, it's a negative thing. So yes, while scientists can occasionally point to the loss of genetic information being a benefit to a particular animal, not only is that extraordinarily rare, but it actually shows de-evolution. So when we look at this graph and we see what has been proven and what has never been proven, and we look back at these bones of Neanderthal man being uncovered, well, it begins to seem as though we're actually, in a sense, de-evolving. I mean, after all, that is what the science is indicating. Now, my point is that when somebody comes to you and claims that evolution is scientific fact, you can be rest assured that they clearly don't even understand evolution on an elementary level. Evolution has absolutely no proof to back it up, and the evidence that is used to support it is questionable at best.
The theory of evolution, like the theory of gravity, is a scientific fact.